Welcome. This is a brief instructional video on how to grab data from our cloud-based solution, CalTopo, in order to get it into your various devices. And we're going to be doing some field work. We're going to be working on computer screens and doing some other things so you can have GPX course data available to you while you're out on the course. I'm Phil Lowry. I'm the Director of Geospatial Information Systems for Destination Trail. I've run 10 200s now and done the Triple Crown twice and had my own share of navigation challenges, so I feel your pain. I'm here to help and hopefully get you squared away so you don't have to worry about getting lost out there while you're on the trail. So with this, we're going to dive right into taking a look at some screens on the computer, and then like I said, we're going to move into a little bit of field work with looking at watches, and hopefully this is going to get you where you need to be and keep you from getting lost.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, let me just back out of that window for a second, is talk about these GPX files that we have sitting in CalTopo. Now, CalTopo is our official mapping site, and the reason we use it is that it's a cloud-based solution, which means that it's a place where we can store all of this data and be able to share it with you all. In CalTopo, you have two different types of data, and follow my cursor here. First, you have over here on the right, you have the layers, which is basically the palette on which lines are drawn and way stations, waypoints and aid stations and things like that. We can put them on like paint. But the layers are owned by CalTopo, so they have things like map builder overlay and contours and all these different types of maps that they have. They have the Forest Service, they have scanned topographical maps, they have satellite Google map layers, and all kinds of cool things that you can switch. So for example, here we're in Map Builder Topo, and you can switch to Forest Service, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, especially back in the days of paper maps that I remember. I used to make posters of these and put them on the wall. So you can use any type of map that you really want. So this layer that I've got up now is called Map Builder Hybrid, and it's taking a little while to load from these here, but you can see that that's our tapestry, right? And we can put on this tapestry a bunch of data, and over here on the left is the data. So we've got markers, and we've got lines and polygons. Polygons are just closed off lines, basically, pentagons or squares or circles or whatever. And so CalTopo will do either of those, but for our purposes, we're mostly concerned about lines. Now, here's the thing: you can export all the data that's over here, all the things you're putting onto the tapestry, right? But you can't export the layers. That's all proprietary to Topo, and every single mapping program has their own kind of layer, like Google Maps that you use in your phone in your car. It basically has three layers, right? Terrain, traffic, and satellite. And sometimes it'll allow you to mix and match. CalTopo is no different. It has its own layers. There are a lot more of them, but on the left you have different types of routes and things like that, and they call them lines. Now, a little bit of typology or definitions. A line is basically the same thing as a course. And what's a course? A course is just a route that is put into your watch or your phone, and Garmin calls them courses, okay? And everybody has a little bit different name for it, but the bottom line is it's a line that you can follow while you're in your phone or on your watch, okay? So some of you have asked, well, can't we just create all the GPXs of these lines that are between the various aid stations? Like here I'm toggling, and I'll zoom in a little bit better so you can see. Here's the start finish of Tahoe, and this, by the way, is not specific to the Tahoe 200. That's the race that I'm using as a template, but it's fungible with Bigfoot or Moab or any other race that uses CalTopo as a basis. Here's the start, and here's Stephen Jones aid station. Well, there's a line that's between them that's called 01 start to Jones, and here it is. And the question is, well, why can't we just email these GPX files out? Well, you can imagine trying to email 250 different GPXs out to people, or put them in some other type of format or whatever. We've opted for a cloud-based solution, and CalTopo's it. And so what's the cloud? It's just someone else's computer. All these maps and tracks are stored on a server that's owned by CalTopo, and you can get on there and you can access all this data. And so it's up to you to learn how to export it so you can use it in whatever format you use, which is what I'm going to teach you how to do today. Please don't ask us to email you these individually. Not going to happen. That's why we provide a cloud-based solution. Okay, so let's just let's settle that question right up front. Okay, so the question then becomes, what am I looking at when I'm manipulating this data? Well, there's a few cool things that CalTopo will do for you. And so you can go over to the data here, and you've got 01, start to Jones. You can create a profile by clicking on that little squiggly line. So it shows you you're climbing here, and then and see the little line. There's a little circle that's following the actual line on the map, and it shows you where you are. So that's a really cool feature that allows you to track where, for example, the high point is. The high point's right around here, where that circle is dinking around there near Ellis Peak. And then it starts to come down and go back up again, and then it goes all the way down here to the Stephen Jones aid station. Okay, so that gives you a real good idea of that feature. The other thing that you can do is just click on the line itself, and it'll give you a variety of options. You can edit it. I recommend you don't, because this is the official map. But you can do things like copy the line if you want to. Once again, I don't recommend you do this. I recommend you just make a copy of this entire file if you want to play around with it. And the way you do that is go over here to, let me click out of this here real quick, hit export, and here it's giving you a few options. You want what's considered to be a full backup, which is a Java-based application or a Java-based file that'll give you a very rich full backup. That's really only if you're going to use it on your computer. So I wouldn't recommend that for a phone or a watch, because it's in a format that other devices really don't understand. You can do a KML on Google Earth if you want to do flyovers and things. That's very advanced. I'm not going to get into that. That's a toy that y'all can use if you want, but if you want to export to Google Earth, you can. And then this is the one you really want, is GPX, handheld GPSs. This will export the entire map as a GPX. Now, that's great, right? And that means that if you use CalTopo to import that back again, you can do that. And some mapping applications will allow you to basically do a reverse engineer and import the whole thing back in the way you exported it. However, and this is going to be one of our big points, so everybody listen up. There are some applications that will not accept a CalTopo file that has this much data in it. It will simply grab the very first waypoint and will grab the very first GPX, and that's it. And that's because of the way that that software is written. It's not my thing, and if I used another cloud-based solution to post this stuff up, you'd be running into the exact same problem with a bulk export. Bulk exports are always fraught, they're always hard, and there's no universal solution. And if there's somebody out there who's a budding entrepreneur who wants to create a situation that allows for universal bulk export and import, there's some money to be made there. But we ain't got it, and nobody else does either. So here's what you're going to have to do in order to export these files as individual GPXs. And for those of you, by the way, who are experiencing problems with Koros, where you're getting all those weird lines going across in the Tahoe version across the lake, and in other situations, all the GPXs randomly being connected to each other, that's the reason why. CalTopo doesn't really know how to import these complicated series of GPX files in a way that they were exported, okay? It doesn't put them in line, it just kind of randomly connects them. So what you do is you identify a particular GPX file that you want. So you want to get the first leg of the race, the first 10 miles, which is start to Jones, okay? Unclick the box, and that unclicks everything, right? So you can just do that, and so it won't show up anymore. And then, or you can, and you don't have to do it on the display here. I mean, you can still see it, but what you do is you go to the export. Now what that does is, if you notice, it just toggled those off and on if you don't want to see them. But if you go to export, and then you unclick the box and unclick the box, you're not going to export anything. But suppose that, now you remember we want GPX, suppose that you want just to export start to Jones. Then you export it. And then what it does is it dumps into your hard drive, and here it is, copy of official map Tahoe 2022.gpx. That is now saved on my hard drive in my downloads folder. And then what I do, and I know this is a pain, but this is the only workaround for these cloud-based solutions. And like I said, there is no bulk import solution here. You just go into your hard drive and you will rename it. Here it is, downloads, and you just rename that little bad boy. Trying to right click it. I'm Mac deprived here, so I'm going to properties, there we go. So I'm going to change the name to 01 start to Jones. Now, I know you're sitting here thinking, we have to do this for every single one. Yeah, you do. If you want this granular data on your watch, because you are now converting, you have created one file, and your Coros and your Garmin aren't going to have any problem with those whatsoever. They're going to be happy as clams to suck those up. And the reason you want to name it here now is that you don't get lost, because every single export will have the same name. And your Windows directory will simply rename them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you won't know which one is which. Now maybe you can keep it straight in your head, realizing yes, Jones is 1, and then Jones to Tahoe is 2, and Tahoe to Brockway is 3. Okay, then you're a genius. I don't do it that way. I rename them at the time. It's an extra 6 or 7 keystrokes, and it's next to 35 seconds per file. But then you're done, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay? And you're going to save more time on the trail not getting lost than by doing it now. All right? Your future self will thank you for this. Press OK. It's fine. I'm not going to change the extension. It's going to be a GPX file. Okay. There it is. Start to Jones GPX file. And it doesn't know how to open it, but that's because I don't have an app on my computer that'll do it. But there it is. It's a GPX file, 01 start to Jones. I probably ought to tell it to use Basecamp, which is a standalone program, but we won't worry about that now. By the way, for those of you using Garmin, Basecamp is a real good tool. Here it is. This shows some of the data that you can manipulate with Basecamp. It lets you update your Garmins and whatnot, but once again, we're getting a field. Okay, so I've taught you how to export a file from CalTopo to your hard drive. Now we're going to go, for those of you who are on Garmin, and Coros people, pay attention, because some of this is going to be fungible with you, and I'm going to take you to where you need to be also. Go to Garmin. Alright, so what you can do now is you can create that course that you just exported. You can create a course from that GPX file. Okay? So here's the beautiful thing, is that I've already done that for you. If you go into Garmin Connect, if you go to a location, so I'm going to say Tahoe City, if I could spell, enter, course type, trail running, and then, you know, I'm not going to put it in distance, and then I do a search. So here I've got a variety of courses that are near Tahoe City. And I'll zoom in to the start of the race, which is right there at Homewood. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is Garmin Connect. You should have your own Garmin Connect account if you have a Garmin. If you don't, then do that. Learn how to do that. This tool is not real efficient. It's just not. The search is not really great. So you're going to have to do a little bit of sleuthing when you see these little dudes that are running in the circle. Those indicate that that's a course. A lot of people have gone and made public courses in here. This is basically a public forum. It's a dumping ground for people to create courses and put them in there. So you're going to get different names and things like that. And you see, for example, start to Barker, start to Jones. This is old data. Some of it's mine. Some of it's not. It is what it is. So my recommendation is that when you import your course, if you want to create your own courses into Garmin Connect, you don't make them public, and you'll have them in your own directory because they'd be created by you. Now this is created by me. If I would just want to, instead of seeing the ones created by me, say nearby courses, look, there's a whole bunch of them. Look at all these, and these were all made by all y'all and your ancestors. Okay, this is what folks have done, and everybody has different naming conventions, and everybody does things different. What I suggest you do is go ahead and use the courses that I have already created, and they all use the same naming convention, which is 01 start to Jones. Okay, so I use 01, 02, 03. So let's click on that, and it has a variety of pieces of information. It has the profile and things of that nature. But if you identify those and you look at the mileages, which is here 10.15, and if it matches what's in CalTopo, because they will match, then you're pretty certain that that is the course that I've created. And so what I've done here is I've saved you a step. You don't need to go and create these courses if you have a Garmin. You just need to go into Garmin Connect and use that prior effort that I've made. Now, suppose you're like, you know what, Lowry, I don't want to use your courses. I want to make my own courses because I'm a big boy or big girl, and I like to do things with my courses that are different. It's like, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. Let me teach you how to do that real quick, okay? So we'll go back to the ones created by me. Okay, there it goes. I'm going to go ahead and do an import. It says create a course. Now, your intuition would be, oh, I'm going to press create a course, right? No, you do not want to create a course, because what that says to Garmin is that you want to trace a course on the existing map. You don't want to do that. It's not real intuitive, but you want to import. All right, so it says if you have a GPX or TCX format, and you're like, what the heck's TCX? It's Garmin's proprietary formula, and I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to learn more about it, Google that. Browse, find a GPX, and we did that in downloads. We renamed it 01 Jones. Let's see here, there it is, downloads. Or is it in this one? Well, it's not showing up, so it's okay. I'm just going to I'll use one of these since it's not playing right now and we don't have time to deal with it on this video. As you can see, I have a lot of GPXs on my computer. Let me go ahead and reverse order on that. There we go. Okay, so here I've got Homewood and Heaven to Back 2022-1. So this looks like it's a GPX file that I've created. I'm going to go ahead and open that. It's going to ask what horse type. Pick trail running. This will allow you to index it later and find it as opposed to a mountain biking route or something else. So what is this? This is a 19-mile course. Looks like it's Tahoe City to Brockway. Why is it called Homewood to Heaven and Back? Because I didn't rename it at the time, and who knows why. I didn't see a need, but it's not renamed. But that's what's in there. But look, it's now populated. You've got a profile. You've got everything. And so you can go in here. It's untitled, so you can go ahead and name it to what you want. So you call it Tahoe. I'm going to call it something weird to B-Way, so that way people don't get confused. I'm going to say yes, save it. Do you want to make it public or not? If it's only for you, why would you do that? I mean, you can, but whatever. And then you say save new course. All right. So now you've got an existing course, right? And you can, this next step, by the way, is fungible, whether it's a course you've created or someone else has created. It doesn't matter. Now you can send it to your device. And you press on this button here, and it will send it to your watch. And if you have more than one watch, or you have a watch and you also have a Garmin 66i, like a satellite inReach, or a handheld like an eTrex or something that talks to your phone, you can send it to devices that way. There is also the option for you to just send the GPXs directly via a cable to like an eTrex 32X or something like that. That's an advanced level. And if you have those devices, you probably already know how to do that, but you can send these GPXs straight to those units. But if you press this button right here, this send a device, it will send it to your device. And when your device syncs with your phone, the next time it does it, it will dump into your device, and then you will be able to see that course in your device, and you can then navigate off of it. There's another portion of this video where I go through and show you how to change courses while you're in midstream, actually in the middle of an activity. Okay, so that's done. Now, and you can see the ones I've made here, for example, this is all stuff from years of doing this race, and then of course there's nearby courses. Those are not made by me, and these are naming conventions that other people use that I don't use, and so I can usually tell which ones are mine, which ones are others. Okay, now for the Coros people, how are you going to be able to navigate using your Coros? The best way to do this is to take the GPX you've created, and I'm going to go back and try to find the one that I created, and maybe in documents. Oh, there it is. I just saw it. There it is. It's in downloads. Okay. Well, okay. It was there. There it is. Okay, there's our buddy Start to Jones. Okay, let's cancel out here. I don't want to do that. So, but we're going to go ahead and create a file or an email, I should say, that attaches this file. So what you want to do is go into whatever email program you use. And the reason we do it this way, by the way, is that Coros doesn't really have a PC or Mac application centered to it. It's all phone-based. That's how they designed it, and they did that way on purpose because they figured it's more complicated to try to have both a phone platform and a platform on the PC and Mac than just have a phone. So it's all phone-based. That has its benefits, but it also can cause problems. And the only way you're going to be able to transfer into your Coros Watch is if you email it to yourself and then rip the attachment, the attached file, in your phone into your Coros app. And that's really simple to do. Okay, so this is my high quality, high resolution solution to trying to show you how to do this on your phone for Coros, because I just don't have, I haven't figured out how to use Filmora with my phone, and I know it does that, but I just haven't. Time is of the essence. We got to get this stuff out. So here I've sent that Jones GPX file, and see it shows up as an attachment here. Okay, so basically what you do now is I simply will take that and I'll click it. Okay, and that tells my phone, see, it's a bunch of gibberish, but it's going to say done, or it's going to have that little arrow box with the arrow sticking out of it. Click on the box with the arrow sticking out of it, and then it's going to say what app do you want to use to open this. Well, you can use Gaia, and it'll just dump into Gaia, and that's really cool, but you don't want Gaia. So scroll on the side, and of course Coros is not one of the favored children, so you have to go to the dot dot dot, and then you get the drop down. So scroll along that until you see Coros. There it is. Go to Coros, and it'll do its thing. Sorry, I'm disoriented here. Look at that. Do you see any crazy lines there? You just see one course. And now you can do your dance, and you can put this into Coros wherever you want. Now it says no watch connection because I don't have Coros with me. But the bottom line is that is how you get it into Coros. And you can save it by pressing this up here, and it'll save it into your library, and then you can dump it into your watch later at your discretion. Now, one thing you're going to notice is, look at the bottom, there's no elevation profile. Can't help that. That's one of the idiosyncrasies of the software. It doesn't take the elevations that are in the digital elevation model from CalTopo into Coros. Now, there is a hack for that. You can run it through some other programs, and then you will be able to do that, but that is not what we're doing here. You are here to nav, not to get the bells and whistles to figure out how to do the elevation lines. But the hack is you can run it through Gaia and export the GPX again through Gaia, and Gaia will add that data. I think Basecamp will do the same thing. Like I said, people really haven't made these platforms cross-compatible the way they probably should. And once again, if you want to make some money and figure all that out, then go for it if you're a developer. So that's how you get your stuff into Corals. Okay, so we've talked about exporting, we've talked about getting things into your Garmin watch using that little connected device. We've talked about getting things into your Corals watch by emailing it to yourself on your phone and then ripping the attachment into Corals. And by the way, your Google and Android platforms will essentially do the same thing. Basically chocolate ice cream versus vanilla. It'll still rip that information. It'll tell you what app you want to open the GPX with, and you can do that in your Android too, and that's how you would do it. Those of you who are using your Corals with your Android, it should not be a problem with your doing that. And if there is a difficulty with that, I would suggest you check the owner's manual or check forums on how to get Corals data from an email GPX to your Corals watches. The last thing I want to do before we get out of this screen and really wrap up the video is talk a little bit about how the data is arrayed here. What I've done is I've kind of got a little bit of a nod to astrophysics. All the courses in the Tahoe course or Tahoe array of courses that are going out are red shifted, and all of them coming back are blue shifted. That's where I came up with the red versus the blue, and it's just easy to remember. If you're going towards Heavenly, it's red. If you're coming back from Heavenly, they're shades of blue. And then of course there's the little segments that are between the aid stations, and then there's the big segments that are basically one on the way out and one on the way back. You might ask yourself, well, why didn't you just make one giant one for the entire 200-mile course? And I'll tell you why. The Garmin watches, and I've not seen this as much on the Corals Vertex, but I know it happens. Garmin, it happens all the time. Sometimes on an out and back, they get lost, and they don't realize that you haven't finished the out before they start to calculate the back. So you'll be 50 miles into the race, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it's reversed course on you and telling you you have 50 miles to go when you actually have 150 miles to go. Rather than deal with that and the drama that could result from it in terms of you having to fuss with your watch in the middle of the race and whatnot, I figured it's easier for you just to get to Heavenly, and then at Heavenly use the function that I'm going to be demonstrating a little bit later in the field on how to actually reverse the course in your watch. And it's really easy on both the Garmin and the Corals platforms. You don't have to turn the watch off, you don't have to do anything, you just have to hit some buttons while you're sitting there eating your cheeseburger at Heavenly, or after you've gotten your nap, and you go and hit those buttons and it'll reverse the entire thing and off you go. Technically you could do that with every one of these bounds in the Tahoe course. In Bigfoot or Moab, you don't want to be doing that. You're going to have A to B, B to C, C to D, and there's no D to C, C to B, B to A. Okay, you're going in one direction, so you don't have to worry about reversing courses on those races, or any other race, unless you are doing a bona fide out and back. So if you're doing Leadville, this is a skill, and this is something you might want to consider. So that pretty much covers everything that you're going to need in order to get data into your watch. A few other small points that I really should mention. All of these things are real easy to do to get the Gaia platform to operate. Gaia is really good about grabbing the entire GPX file from CalTopo. You don't have to do it course by course. You can just take the whole frickin' thing, dump it into your hard drive, email it to yourself in that way that I showed you, and tell Gaia to grab it, and Gaia will grab it and will import the whole thing, and it'll be beautiful. It'll be, all your GPXs will be there, they'll all be identified, and they'll even keep the naming conventions, so that's a good thing. But I'm going to give you a cautionary note. I have had a lot of bad experiences with Gaia recently, especially within the iOS, of it stuttering, freezing, and generally not working. Now, that's if you're, and also it being somewhat of a battery suck. All those things together mean that I don't use Gaia unless I have to. In other words, my phone I'm listening to music with it generally. I have it in airplane mode, and I have it in low power mode. I will turn Gaia on only if it's like, oh my gosh, where am I? And I really need to have that big screen. My watches aren't telling me. It's just the chances of that happening are infinitesimally small. But sometimes, especially when you have Ultra Brain, you just want that big screen and you want that warm fuzzy of, okay, I'm in the right place. But I would not use Gaia as your primary source of navigation, especially if you're an iOS. Now, your mileage may vary. It may be because I have so much data in Gaia that it's causing it to be chuggy that way. I've not talked to the developers, but I'm just going to warn you, make sure that you have tested it in the field. Make sure that you are comfortable with using it on a regular basis, and that it is something where you feel like, okay, this is what I'm going to use all the time. And if you've been doing that, then that's fine. The other concern that I have with using your phone, and now, by the way, on the Android platform, I found Gaia to be much more reliable. It generally tends to function much better. I do have a suspicion that the reason that I'm having problems with Gaia is that I have 3.5 or 4 years worth of data in it, and I haven't switched a lot of that off because I like to see my tracks. I have that same exact configuration in my Android device, but my Android device doesn't seem to have a problem with being chuggy or anything like that. So I don't know what's going on with iOS. I have no hesitation at all of using Gaia in your Android, except for the fact that, like I said, it can be a little bit of a battery hog, especially if you're using it to look at all the time. If you have that screen up and lit, you're going to use your battery, and you're just going to have to charge your phone. And that's, we'll talk about power in the course of this video, and that's an issue. The other problem you have with using your phone as a primary navigation device is if it rains. If it rains, a haptic device like a phone, it has a touch interface, loses about 40% of its accuracy. Now that may not sound like, well, it's still 60% accurate. Basically, it means you can't use any of the buttons. You can't even half the time put in your passcode or use your fingerprint reader. You probably can use your face recognition, but that's only if you don't have something on your head or face like a headlamp and glasses, sunglasses and stuff. So my point is, you're creating an impediment to be able to access navigation, probably when you're in extremis. If it's raining, you probably are wanting to get access to the navigation and you're already in a situation that's causing you stress. Not a good time for your phone to crap out on you, and it will crap out on you even if you have it in a plastic bag. I'm not saying it's going to fail. I'm not saying it's not waterproof. I'm saying that you will not be able to access the data because it is getting wet, which means you're going to have to get yourself under a dry spot. You're going to have to stop. You're going to have to wipe off the screen. You're going to have to find something dry to wipe your hands on, and then you're going to have to figure out what's going on. If you're okay with that, and that is going to be your ultimate backup, and you're going to have to go through all of those physical steps and mental steps in order to access your backup, that's fine. My experience as someone who deals with human factors and deals with, for example, soldiers that are experiencing combat situations and dealing with people who are going through difficult times, is that you want your backup to be keep it simple, stupid. That's the only thing I'm going to say about using your phone. You may have an outstanding time, you have no problem recharging, your crew will recharge it for you, you'll have 4 days of absolutely glorious dry weather, and you're going to be like, what was Lowry talking about? Well, I've been through 200 milers where it's rained for 36 hours off and on, and if I'd had to rely on my phone, I would have been in a world of hurt. So that's all I'm going to say on that topic. Once again, it is convenient. It is a great display. It's huge. It gives you great details. So there are pros and cons to everything. But just bear that in mind. And if you're frustrated with getting things onto your watch and wondering, why am I bothering if I have my phone, maybe that'll motivate you to get it on your watch. Okay, so welcome to Debbie's View, someplace that I come to a lot, right near my home. And so what we're going to talk about first is GPS. Real quickly how it works. It's going to be a little teeny bit of math. Basically, GPS, they're satellites. They're called geosynchronous positioning system satellites. And there's other systems out there now too, and those are going to be important, so bear with me.
China's put some up, Russia's put some up, European Union's put some up. So there's a lot of them up there. There used to be, when I started doing this back in 93, 94, there was just the US system, but now there's a whole bunch of them. And the way they work is that you have a satellite that knows where it is, and it communicates that position, and it sends a very weak radio signal down to Earth, and your GPS receiver can pick that up. So the concept of triangulation is what they use, and triangulation's old as dirt. It's been around forever. It's basically the way to find the center of a triangle. If you know where 3 different points are, you can figure out where you are based upon where those 3 points are. And even if those are in space, it doesn't matter. And then if you add more points, then you can also know where you are elevation-wise. Most GPS receivers will pick up, now up to 20, 25 different signals, depending on what system they use. Now, the reason that's important is when you're trying to figure out how to save power on your GPS, you can switch these off and on, both on the Coros and on the Garmin platform, depending on which watch you have. So if you want to have all satellites on all the time, then you're going to use the most power, right? And Garmin has a system that allows you to configure which satellites you're going to look at. Is it going to be just the GPS, which is just American, or is it going to look at all of them? And then there's also a concept called dual channel, which is yet another concept where the satellites emit more than one signal, and so the GPS processor is even more accurate. You can choose, and you're going to have to look in your manual what you want to do, but for my purposes, what I would recommend is probably just going with GPS if you want the longest battery life. On the Phoenix 7, that's going to cover an entire 200 miler, over 100 hours, if you turn off all your other settings and use GPS only. If you use GPS plus one of the other systems, or whatever other systems Garmin picks in its silicon brain, you'll make it about 75 to 77 hours, which is probably going to be enough for you if you go pretty fast, and then do the math from there. If you put it on maximum accuracy, you're going to be down like in the 30 or 20 hours, and that for some of us, that's a challenge to even do 100 miles in. So I would recommend you look at your manual. Coros on the Vertex 2, for example, I know that will pop over 100 hours if you're using the simplest GPS configuration. There's one other out there called UltraTrack that I think both Coros and Garmin have a version of. I'm getting bitten by a mosquito. Okay, tis the season. But I don't recommend those because they tend to really get screwy, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, why that is. I'm just being distracted by the mosquito, but he's moved on, or she's moved on. So when you're doing course-based navigation, like what we've been talking about here, where you have a course and you're following it, what your odometer says on your GPS really isn't that important, because you're going to get some herky-jerky, what's called multipath, lost signal, especially in like these woods, you're gonna get some lost signal, right? And then it picks it up again, and you really don't notice this, but it'll show up once you look in your map. Your path will look jiggly when you're on a fairly straightforward trail. That's okay. It might give you a little bit of extra distance, but your odometer isn't what matters. What matters is how close you're staying to that track. And if that track is 10 miles long and you've done 9.2 of it, you're only 0.8 miles from the next aid station. Track, course, I use those interchangeably, okay? So I think using GPS alone is just fine, even though you're gonna get a little bit more herky-jerky, a little bit more of the stuff you may not want. And that's okay. So that's going to be better for your power saving. And believe me, in doing a 200 miler, you don't want to have to worry about charging too often, because it gets to be a real mentally fatiguing task, especially if you don't have crew and you're relying on your drop bags and you forget your charging brick a half mile outside the aid station, and your watch dies and now you have no net. Or at least you have to rely on your backup, which is probably your phone, which is just one more piece of drama that you don't need to have if you can avoid it. Coros was the same way. I found that the Coros works just fine, the Vertex 2 anyway. That's all I can vouch for. If you're using just simple GPS and you've got that course in there and you're looking at the map and you can see that nice red course with little arrows on it showing you which way to go. So we're really talking about navigation-based use of the GPS and not how far exactly did I go. If you want to know how far exactly you went, number one, you're never going to get that because these are amateur devices and they're just never going to give you that number. But you're going to get closer to it the more satellites you activate. But then for that price of accuracy, you're going to pay in juice. So that's what I have to say about power saving. One of the things.
Okay, so on UltraTrack, why do you want it or why do you not?
Well, UltraTrack's a great invention for super long distance events. Okay, we're talking a week or 2 week long backpacking trip where you're basically turning the watch off when you're not on the trail and you want to save as much juice as you can. It's a great concept, and you think, oh, that'd be perfect for a 100-miler. Well, or 200-miler or 100-hour event. Yeah, but the problem is the way the UltraTrack works is that it essentially turns the GPS off for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever at a time, whatever you've set that interval for. And by the way, I'm using the Garmin term, UltraTrack. Coros has the same thing. They just call it something else. Well, that's all well and good if you just want to kind of have a general sense of what you've done and you're not really navigating with the GPS. But if you're navigating with the GPS and it's turning off every 10 minutes, that's a problem, because if it turns off at minute 0 and at minute 1 you get off course, you're going to be off course for 9 minutes before you're told you're off course. That's pretty much unacceptable. The other problem with UltraTrack is that when you are navigating on a course, and I know that at one point you couldn't even use UltraTrack when you're navigating a course in Garmin. Maybe they've changed that now, I don't know. But if you're navigating on a course, you got to remember that the GPS needs to wake up and find itself. And when a GPS wakes up and finds itself, it's a lot like what happens to a human on day 3 of a 200-miler who wakes up and finds herself. For me, it's something like, oh, where am I? What? Oh. I have another word for this, but it's not safe for work or family. Anyway, it's an experience that the GPS doesn't like either, just like we don't like waking up from our dirt naps. And so during that time period where it's kind of orientating itself, that's a military skip, orienting itself. The Army uses orientating, and it's a dumb word. Anyway, you're going to have a position error, and you're going to get all these prompts saying, oh, you're off course. You're off course. Oh, now you're on course. Well, try doing that every 10 minutes for 95 hours. That's going to get really old really fast. So my recommendation is that you don't use UltraTrack. Yes, it will definitely get you over 100 hours. But if you're using it for course-based navigation, which is what we're talking about, it's really not worth it. Power saving. One other thing about power saving also, since we're talking about that subject, is lighting. Arm's getting tired, here's on the switch. As a general rule, most of us, and this is not really related to GPS, but like I said, we're all about power and we're all about convenience and keeping these races as simple as possible. Most people overlight. They use way too much light. Now, some people, like my wife, she needs to have the whole place lit up like day in order to be able to stay awake. In a 200-miler, that's not super important, because if you're having to rely on caffeine pills, lighting, or something else to stay awake, then you should probably be getting some sleep. You're not going to be able to get away without sleeping in these events unless you are a really gifted bunch that are really fast or just are genetically endowed. I'm probably one of the least sleepers out there, and I don't rely on anything to try to keep me awake. If I start feeling sleepy, I go to sleep. I just crawl by the side of the trail and do a dirt nap. So I am skeptical of the whole I need a lot of light just to function. Lights have really gotten bright in the last few years. Way brighter than you need unless you're running really fast on technical trails or you're doing a lot of bushwhacking or stuff like that. In those respects, those new lights that are super bright are really good, and they are really good, period, if you just keep them at a lower level. And then you're saving a ton of battery and you don't have to switch out batteries, and then that light could last you 3 nights, okay? But to just crank it to the top setting because that's what you think you need, that's just probably not necessary. And you're going to create more hassle for yourself in terms of recharge and having to have more battery packs and things like that. One other thing to remember also is that there's going to be some people on this course that probably aren't going to use lights a lot because we're going to have full moon, at least for the Tahoe 200. And if you're in a situation where you don't need light because you have a lot of ambient light from city lights or other sources, or some people just don't use very much light, or they're going to be using tactical lighting. They're going to be using green or red. Like, I'm an Army paratrooper, so when we jump from a C-130 at night, it's lit up in green. So when we get out of the aircraft, we can still see our terrain, and we don't use lights coming down because that would be really stupid, because then we just get shot. Tactical lighting, if you see someone using green or red, be extra courteous. Remember that the rules for lighting are the same as in a vehicle as they are on the trail. If you have someone coming towards you, lower your light to lowest level and shade it from their eyes, and both sides should do that. Otherwise, neither of you can see, and you'll run into each other and maybe get hurt or something. If you're coming up behind somebody or they just passed you, please lower your light to the absolute lowest level, especially if they're using tactical lighting, if they're using red or green, because you are just destroying their ability to see at night. Nobody can see very well at night using a light. If you're using a white light, you are really severely occluding your vision. You've lost all your peripheral vision and all your ambient vision. And you've deactivated 90% of your retina because you're relying on that white cone of light in front of you. I highly suggest you lower that amount of lighting, use tactical lighting if you can, and then you'll see that you can see a lot more. But with respect to those people who are doing that, they're trying to see as much as they can, and your light is interfering with that. So just keep the levels as low as possible. And in the process, you'll save a lot of juice. So once again, we're talking about battery use, but it kind of got a little bit into etiquette and protocol, but that's okay, because we're all here to learn and to get along on the trails and have a great time.
Okay, so some people have asked, if I'm in the middle of, recording my race and I'm 40 hours into it, so I'm at a particular aid station for Tahoe 200, this year's version. It's going to be heavenly, but for whatever race you're in, and I want to turn off the course that I've been using or just start a new course, that's easy to do. Hello. That's really easy to do if you simply go into your menu, and you won't have to shut off your GPS or anything. So I've got an hour and 3 minutes on this particular walk that I'm doing here in the woods. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to slow down so you can see it. This is your bevel button. This is the one that allows you to scroll. Okay, see that? This button right down here on the lower left is what you want to use. Just long press that bad boy, or just press it. Long press it, sorry. Pressing it gives you a lap. Now, I have mine set to navigation, but what you have here is basically all the different options you have. So, we go to navigation, which is where I was, but I wanted to show you in case you aren't there. So go to nav, select courses. Okay, so I'm going to go through and see if I've got the course that I want. There it is. So that's Tahoe 200. This is the outbound start to heavenly. And I just press the bevel button again. Now look at these options. Start course, elevation details. That just gives me my profile, whatever. Start point direction. And then do you want your deviate course alert on? And I always say yes to that. So you should say yes to that too. That should be something you can fix in settings. We can just do it now. DVA's course alert on. Okay, let's go ahead and back out of that. This is the back button right here. Going down here. Okay. Now, this is super important. Start point direction. Remember the scenario I gave you, which is that we have arrived at the halfway point at heavenly and we want to go back. Now, you can either have a course that does that, or you can just reverse. Start point direction, positive or reverse. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I want to do reverse. And then I go here and I start course. Now, I'm not going to start the course because I'm 700 miles away from Lake Tahoe right now. But the point is that all you have to do is press that button. Well, I'll go ahead and start it, whatever. And now it's working. I started the course. Now, it's nowhere now on the map. You can't see the red line with the arrows because I'm nowhere close to that. But I'm going to turn the log function off. Now, see, it says I'm 578.12 miles off course. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll away from the map. And then I'm going to hit the hard press the back button again. I'm going to go to navigation. And I'm going to end the course because this is stupid that I'm navigating Lake Tahoe in Washington. But that's how you do it. That's how you navigate a course on a Coros and turn it off and on mid-run. And notice we're now at 106.39. The timer never stopped. You can do all that with the timer and the odometer
and the heart rate and everything else going in the background, no sweat. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing we did with the Chorus, but we're going to do with the Garmin. Now with the Garmin, now I have my Garmin on energy saver settings, so you'll see the screen went blank. So then I have to do a long press because I have it locked. It's really hard to see that screen. There we go. So what I have to do there is I do a long press on the middle, and then I do trail run settings, power mode, navigation. I hit navigation here. It's disorienting because it's not on my wrist. I'm hitting the wrong buttons. And then you go down to courses. Okay. And then I've got all my courses, so I can go up or down. Do whatever I want to do. And that's an old design course I need to get out of there. Yeah, lots of courses on this watch. There's the Grand Canyon. See, these are all courses. I pick whichever one I want. So I do start to Jones. Say we're at the beginning of the race. We're not, but whatever. You get the concept. It'll load it, and then it'll say do course. If I press this button, I will initiate the course. If I don't press the button, then it won't. So I'm going to get out of it. And get out by using this button here. That's the back button on Garmin. And I'm back to my screen. And you'll notice that the time elapsed hasn't changed. We're at 1:09. So that's how you do it with the two. I suggest you go back through this until this becomes an absolutely immersed skill for you. And also use your manual so you can better know how to do this. You need to practice it too. So there's still a little bit of time making these videos before the Tahoe 200, but if you're using this video for Bigfoot or for Moab or any of the other destination trail races, start using these functions. Create courses around your home, around your training areas, get used to them, be able to do it like I used to teach my Boy Scouts. You should be able to tie these knots upside down in a cold shower with the lights out. And you should be able to do courses the same way, because you may be in that situation. And someday I'll tell you the story about I was on the Klickitat Trail and I ended up being upside down in a shower with the lights out. But I survived. So remember how I said it is not the wisest idea to use a phone-based application in the rain. It does rain from time to time, especially at the Bigfoot 200. We've had rain at Moab. We've had really substantial rain at Tahoe. So rain is definitely an issue. That being said, there's a really important thing that I need to mention, that Destination Trail and none of us particularly endorse one product over another. I know that we've encouraged Gaia in the past because it seems to have worked. CalTopo now has a application for both Android and for iPhone that has shown a lot of promise and can be used for navigation. Whatever you're going to use, make sure you practice with it. But if you do have issues with it, please don't reach out to us for tech support, because we really don't have the bandwidth or even the knowledge to be able to provide that to you. We're getting occasional questions on how do I convert a track to a route in Gaia or in CalTopo? How do I do a variety of these things? And as I mentioned, the Koros situation, we did feel it was important to address the fact that there is a bug in the Koros app that was linking all the courses together in a weird way. And we're trying to fix that for you. But when it comes right down to it, please engage with the tech support people at your various applications and devices and encourage them to fix things, because what the Koros app is doing is really not appropriate and they need to fix that. So if you do have questions with any of the really application specific issues, please address those to your app developer, and especially things like login and how to set up your account. We don't have anything to do with that and wouldn't know how to help you. So thanks. And that pretty much wraps up our instructional video. I know it went a little longer than even I planned, but a lot of information to unpack, so I hope it was helpful to you. If you need to reach me, I can be reached at hyperphil@destinationtrailrun.com. HYPERPHIL, hyperphil, like hyperdrive or hyperspace. And no, I did not come up with that name. That name was actually given to me during the 1994 Wasatch 100 by Grizz Randall, who was an old Wasatch veteran, and after watching me on the course and suffer but do some of the other things that I do, I got that name. And so my origins go back to the Wasatch 100, which I've run 20 times. I'm now retired to 200s, but anyway, that's why I have that name. I'm eager to get your questions and hopefully can get you answers. Like I said, please no tech support questions on your specific platforms. We want to deal strictly with the GPX and trying to address some of the bugs we've addressed today. And good luck to you.